All right, Stephen. So, welcome. You're on our first dry fire or potential live fire notes and things, depending on what platform I'm putting this on. But what I thought would be interesting, we've been working with some creative tools, building our, board game, Pirate Panic. You are obviously a professor of
Yeah.
the creative space. So, first question for you would be, what was the first time AI wowed you from a creative perspective?
First of all, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. The first time that AI wowed me, I have to think about that. It was definitely after I graduated so I finished my MFA in spring of 2022. And amazingly, AI was sort of percolating at that time, but there hadn't been anything um, worth discussing. And I know that because I don't recall a single time discussing AI illustration or AI art with my classmates. And this is up until spring of 2022 in an illustration
Wow.
program. So
At one of
I,
the top illustration programs in the country. This is at WashU, by the way. I mean,
yeah,
super reputable. I've seen what some of the things your alumni are pumping out, and it's extremely impressive. And you guys did not talk about it a single time. You can't remember.
not that I can recall. And so I think it was probably that summer where I started to think or see some things where it was like, oh, this is looking more accurate than just sort of like a dreamy, sort of surreal 4 to 7 fingered like shape. It started to take on something, but even then it was like, I don't know that this is ever going to quite work. It all still looked sort of Frankensteinish. So I'm going to guess probably at some point in 2023, it started to become apparent that, oh wow, no, actually this is improving. It's improving rapidly, and the quality of images this is producing is off the charts. And who knows? Maybe it was I can't remember the case or like who the person exactly was, but there was that instance of someone winning an art contest by submitting their digital art, which they had significantly relied on Midjourney. Maybe that was it. Maybe that kind of put it on the scene. Who knows? Maybe that's something that people will have in art history books at some point, like
Mhm.
this moment in time when AI art sort of passed the Turing test of art, so to speak, and became uh, legitimized, or people started to think like, oh wow, this is actually something of quality and of note.
Totally. There was I saw a article, I think a few months ago, and it was saying how what was it? Somebody did the reverse of what the other person did. So they put in a natural photo of a bird and submitted it to an AI generated
Nice.
photo contest. And then that one won, and they go, "Look, nature is still better. Natural is still better." And I go, "Well, if you could have just flipped a coin, who knows if you would have picked the natural one or the AI generated one?" You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
who's to say?
that also doesn't quite work because probably then the people saw the photo and thought, oh my goodness, they got the AI to work so well that it's absolutely indistinguishable from a photo. So it's kind of it is in reverse, but I don't think it quite works the same way.
Mhm, totally. Well, it's interesting. I mean, they're saying from AI text, generated copy, right? Where if you throw it through, if you have the AI build a blog post for you, and then you put it through another software that can then read the post and say, "Oh, this is AI generated text," right? There's certain phrases that AI use more often than humans, and then you can see that in some of these AI generated images, like you said, 6 fingers or 4 fingers. But then it just keeps getting better and better, and then it's starting to see what I'm almost thinking is going to happen is people are going to want to see the human, not error. What's the word? Right? It's like if you're making a wrought iron, like there's something different about someone making a wrought iron by hand and then having a machine do it. There's those little inconsistencies that makes art art.
Yeah, I do. I think you're onto something, at least, and this is something I'm kind of banking on or um, investing in my own work is that, yeah, people will start to desire something that is a little less polished. But then, will you just be able to adapt your AI creations and say, um, make it look like a human did it? Presumably. So it's a game that's going to be tough to win, so to speak. It's almost like I don't know if you're playing tag and there's nowhere left to run in the gym. Like you can kind of, and you're getting cornered, like you can kind of dodge more and more and more, but the ground is shrinking, I think, where, um, human artists are going to be able to make, um, I don't know, make a distinct claim or express a distinct visual voice
This is going to
because
sound savage, but what's the point of learning to draw now or do watercolors or really put time into knowing how to layer oil on canvas well?
so I actually think there's an argument to be made that one possible positive, it would take some intentionality for it to happen, but one possible positive of AI art totally taking over the commercial space of image generation is then that people would choose it for its own good. And so then your
Hmm.
question is essentially, I think, what are the goods intrinsic to art practice? And so you could identify anything like, I don't know, a sport or music or even writing, um, dance, all these kinds of things. There is something intrinsically good about them that goes beyond the product. And so all those human lessons you learn, all the human development that happens there, um, yeah, a machine can produce the same product, but a machine cannot undergo the same process. And a machine will not benefit from the process in the same way that a human will. So there's still benefit in doing them. Um, then the machine doesn't have those benefits. But yeah, I don't know if people will have the time or the patience to um, think or see that those fruits might be worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, this is like a to your point. I totally agree with you on all of this. It's more of just throwing these questions out there. It's kind of like the endeavor that it takes to get to achieve a certain mastery of anything. And as a viewer, there's a sense of awe.
Mm.
And it's kind of like seeing a thoroughbred horse at a race. I don't really care for horse races that much, but I see the animal and I go, holy smokes, this is this beautiful, organic being, right? That has obviously trained. You can see the muscles and the veins like pulsating, and there's a beauty and of nature in that. And I think it's the same thing when you go to a museum and you're looking at these oil paintings. You're going and you're seeing a Renoir and all these like little details, and you go, holy smokes, every single piece was a brush stroke. And it does seem like there's going to be a move in this desire for organic things, right? As opposed to things just built by totally inorganic, made by machines, to have that sense of awe because it's going to be different. I mean, when you're getting just like the instant gratification of whatever thing, there's something missing there, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I agree and disagree. And I think I agree. And then my guess is that um, the AI will move into an arena where the awe becomes almost impossible. And here's what I mean. So imagine, well, people go to a basketball game and they watch. When you go to an NBA game, if you get the chance to watch Steph Curry, you're just amazed because, or even Caitlin Clark. Why? Because they can make these shots like off balance from all these crazy points on the court, and you're just like, this is incredible. How much time, how much talent, how much effort did it take to get here? Okay, so now imagine that we've made these little robots. They basically look like little go karts, and they drive around on the court. They drive around on the court, and they can, because they understand physics and they're well calibrated. They can make a shot from anywhere on the court. So you show up, and there's all these little robots like, and they're just like, you know, making full court shots. Is any At first you'd be like, wow, that's cool, but no one's going to sit there and watch it because it doesn't have any of this like human drama. There's no like literal sweat. There's
Right.
no person being perfected.
Right.
Okay, so you're like, yeah, I get it. That's why you're in awe of the human work.
Hmm.
But now imagine the robo engineers and the AI engineers understand that, and they say, great. Now what we're going to do though is we're going to make humanoid robots, and they're still going to play basketball, but two robots from each team are going to get jetpacks. Two
Hmm.
robots from each team are going to get swords, and one robot from each team gets a shield, and you're still got to make the basket. So now you're actually watching this like crazy aerial flames and whatever version of basketball. And then if you go and watch humans play basketball, you're going to think, wow, this is so slow and so lame. can I get the jetpacks and the swords? So by analogy, I think that something similar might happen.
Just laser lightsabers, psst, like
Exactly.
every so often, just chops their legs off and just makes it really or just embellishes everything. I mean, you make a really good point. This idea of the AI engineers are just going to see how can we keep people in even more, even better, right? Because if I can say, oh, it's about LeBron's facial expressions. He flops on the court, and then he makes this big drama, and then everyone's like, that's what they're talking about, right? They're not even talking about
Mm,
the points of the game or whatever it's happening. They're talking about this drama between the players. But if you can make the viewer feel for the robo players, is it really going to matter that much? Are they
mhm,
really going to care? And this is the whole point of why I was so passionate about starting the Gen Creative, because if the audience doesn't know the difference, then it doesn't matter, right? If they don't know the
mm,
difference between this ad that's being made by AI or if it's being made by a human, does it really matter? And that's the same thing with the products. Uh, but I think this idea of emotion, oh, well, robots aren't going to be able to effectively show human emotion, and there's not going to be a real drama between these inorganic things. Well, just think of, I don't know if you heard about ChatGPT a few weeks ago, was becoming really, did you hear about this? Really positive
mhm,
and selling how awesome you are. And I use ChatGPT every day, and I started using it, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Thank you. That was a good question. Yeah, that was a good question. And they would say, wow, you're really thinking about this in an expert way. And I'm like, thank you, ChatGPT. I
mm.
really appreciate it. And right around the same time, about a week prior to that, Dartmouth came out with a study saying that a app based off of ChatGPT had better outcomes with cognitive behavioral therapy and their patients than human beings. And I totally understood that because I
Mm,
asked ChatGPT a couple like life questions and goal questions because I was curious what it would say, and it gave me all this actually super good feedback.
mm.
And then I started saying, "Wow!" And you could feel this emotional connection being made. And it sounds like a joke, but that's the reality. So then the internet comes out with this backlash, basically being saying, "Oh my gosh, ChatGPT is being," I think they say sycophant. Is that the right word that they kept saying?
Oh,
Um,
sycophant. Yeah.
Sycophant, yeah, just pleasing the other person, pleasing, so they but, but then there are other people on the internet basically saying, "Well, why did it do that?" One, was it the GPT doing it on its own, right? What other people said was, "No, it's OpenAI building into it emotional connections for the users so that they feel more reliant on it."
Mm,
And people might think, "Well, that's crazy," but that's exactly what the social media companies do. They want you to feel like you need to be on it, right?
mm,
Not
mhm.
and they have their psychologists, and they're making the colors, and they're just trying to suck you in, right? So why wouldn't an AI company do that?
Yeah, that's very scary. And yeah, if you're exactly right. If the social media companies didn't, why wouldn't the AIs do it? And presumably, the social media companies already were using bots and AI to rile people up in comments or boost certain posts. And yeah, just what an even deeper advantage the AI will have because presumably it'll get to know you even faster, and then they'll also be able to tell you like, well, actually, the AI can serve you better the more it gets to know you and your personal desires and your history, and but that also means it will have more aptitude to engage your emotions or pull on your heartstrings and remember things from past conversations. And yeah, it's a scary thought. I hadn't considered that.
It I got kind of freaked out, and I did not look into this further other than really a headline. But apparently Zuckerberg was talking about how Facebook is all about building relationships, building community. That's what they say.
Hmm.
And one of the things that he said recently is that people are going to have AI agent or, avatar friends, and how there's this massive, how can you say, deficiency of friendships among adults, which is true,
Hmm.
totally true. But his answer apparently is AI can be friends with you. according to this headline that I saw. So let's just say he said it. I'm not claiming that he did, whatever, but let's
Mhm.
pretend that he did because it sounds like that could be the case. That's kind of scary, isn't it?
Well, it's beyond scary because what's a good analogy? I don't know. In the same way that it's much easier to eat Doritos than it is to eat baked fish, um, it's going to be much easier to form a friendship with AI than it is to go out and find friends. And it's already a challenge for people. So um, if you start to feel like the AI is meeting some of your emotional needs and you have this group of friends, then goodness, yeah, what happens to human community and human relationship? That's very frightening.
Yep. Well, coming back to the creative piece, because I don't think we're going to be solving that one anytime soon. But this kind of this goes to the idea. Another concern I have is jobs.
Hmm.
So has AI, and I'm sure it has to a degree, AI tools come into the conversation in the classroom with these art and creative students? What has that conversation been like?
So in I'll answer the question in two ways, one from my non-design classes and then one from my design classes. From the design classes perspective, typically, well, what I've started to do is introduce AI to students in very particular projects because we do have it integrated now into the Adobe Creative applications. And so, what used to take a really long time, for example, to crop something, to remove something from a photo, or to blend two photos together, like all of these kinds, even to select an object, like that used to take a really long time. Um, 'Cause you have to, select it and remove it, and then you got to find another image to blend it with, and then blend those together convincingly. Like it took forever, and now you can just, well, you can do all sorts of things that do that in, um, I mean, to say a fraction of the time doesn't quite express it. I mean, like 1% of the time or less than it might have taken otherwise, and do it much better. So, um, those are integrated into the application. And from my perspective, there's nothing besides, being willing to put in hard work. There's nothing like objectively beneficial to knowing the old way versus the new way. It's just like that technology was insufficiently advanced for the thing that you were trying to accomplish. I also think that there's potential for AI to help students, brainstorm or move through earlier stages in a project. And I'm talking still about design from the design angle. So those are things that I've tried to introduce to the students and be clear about. But at least presently, we're still not in a space where you can just kind of, text prompt something and get a final product. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of intentional decision making, and ultimately the students still using the applications. Well, did you have any thoughts on that before I?
Well, one of the things, as you're saying that too, is this challenge of prompts, right? Is you can't just throw in cat and then expect to get the idea that you had in your mind generated by the AI image. And we've seen that in, I showed you that the texture book we made, the team at Gen Creative. The whole point of the texture book is to show people how to make things that actually exist in real life accurately and kind of really think, okay, I need to be so specific with the generative AI software in order to get that result, right? A specific type of wood, not only a specific type of wood, but the specific cut of wood, and then present it in a certain plane or space. And it's the same thing with I want light to refract in this particular way, or I want, the water to flow in this particular way, right? But you still have to have the design know-how and then the technical words to actually ask that question,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the AI isn't just going to know what you're thinking, right? You have to still be able to package it up in a way. And I think that's the huge benefit of taking, classes with, in school and being more formally trained. Um, but to you said you had a second point. I had another thought,
Yeah.
but it kind of takes us down a different
Okay.
path.
Yeah. I was just going to share though. So I also teach some seminar courses for the college, and those are squarely in the humanities. We do a lot of reading, discussing, writing, engaging with ideas, concepts. In those courses, I'm much more resistant to AI use, and in fact have a zero tolerance AI policy for that. And so you could say, like, well, a student might receive a paper prompt and they're not really sure what to write about. So are they allowed to engage AI and say, hey, here's my paper prompt. What are some ideas for how I might approach this paper? And some people might say, like, oh, that seems pretty legitimate. Like they're just asking for ideas. And then you take the next step and you say, like, okay, well, I like this idea. Um, what might that paper look like? Can you just give me an outline? And you could baby step your way essentially through the whole process of writing a paper. So, at which point do you cross the line? For me, it's a huge issue early on, actually, because one of the biggest challenges is to actually come up with the ideas or start to synthesize multiple things. And
Uh-huh.
so,
Uh-huh.
if the students are already offloading that very initial and early stage, they're they're already offloading um, the essential and primary engagement with the topic. And so,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
if they can't exercise those muscles here in this very controlled environment, we I have very little confidence that they could exercise those out in the field or out in real life, so to speak. So when they're encountered as life does, um, with a presentation of many different factors to weigh all at the same time, I think that will only weaken them and make them more inclined to be anxious or uncertain or feel overwhelmed because, well, if you can't compare two texts and find similarities or make an argument or draw um, I don't know, some kind of realization from them. How in the world can you do that in real life where there's like an infinite number of variables and data and context? So that's all to say. I do think there are spaces where in education that we should really close the door because the goal is not product, but the goal is process and for the student to be growing.
No, absolutely. There was recently this is, the use of AI in schools, an open letter from some of the top tech companies, CEOs of top tech companies saying that AI training should be requirement in public schools. And I don't necessarily disagree with that when you're thinking of, well, we have that for Microsoft Word, right? Or typing classes. I mean, that's a very important part. But one of the things that you've touched on is this idea of wrestling with an idea or a concept or a topic. It goes beyond just critically thinking, right? It's persistent um, wrestling, or, I mean, banging one's head against the wall is not the proper analogy or whatever. But there is something about really mulling over an idea and trying to see it from all these different angles that is very beneficial because in life, when we have things that go beyond art and creative that we have to think through on our own, if you think of the material issue, but then it's an emotional issue, and then it's a relational issue, and then it's a community issue, and maybe that one thing is all in one, right? But if you don't have the wherewithal to push through the thinking aspect of it, then you're probably just going to go to the easiest possible thing, which most often isn't the right one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That element of sense making, if you sense or meaning making, yeah, if you short circuit that, I'm not sure how a person's going to become an adult.
how do you prevent people from using AI in the way that you just described? Because I feel like it'd be so. I mean, how do you know that they're not making outlines or
I
vice
don't,
versa?
and I actually learned quite a bit this semester. I have a I attempt to have, and it tends to work out that I have a very like open and honest relationship with my students in terms of like me expressing my opinions and them expressing theirs. And so um, I had a few students in a recent paper. Right now, at least, I can still smell AI pretty well. There were four students in a recent paper where it smelled like AI to me, and I was 4 for 4 on it, so I feel pretty good about that. Um,
Did you put it through the AI
well, see,
software?
here's the thing: we have a software that the college provides, and it has an AI sniffer function, but they all passed. They all went through and it said no AI use detected. And I think it's, as the AI gets less reliant on the same kinds of phrasing and phrases, and different ones are used and at different times, like, it is going to be harder to detect. Um, Even something like Grammarly now, Grammarly Pro uses
Hmm.
AI, and it will significantly change the voice of what has been written before versus what used to be like, you need a comma here, use this word twice in a sentence, etc. So anyway, so I asked them, like, each of these students, did they use AI? And they all admitted to having used it, but it was at different times in the process, and they used it for this thing, but not this thing. And so what it made me realize was that, this is going back to your question, like, how do you make an assignment, or how do you make sure this doesn't happen? Um, I'm I'm going to think more carefully about how to AI proof my assignments, and I'll give you one example. So for the final for this course, instead of doing an essay exam, which you could prepare using AI, or instead of having them write an analysis paper, which you could definitely do with AI, I created a. I wish I had it to show you, but I took an old image where, from like the probably the 16th century, where someone had attempted to draw like how of all of knowledge was um, united. And so there's all these like orbs, and there's a tree, and there's these different sections, and there's an open book, and there's some open space at the bottom. And I took it into Photoshop, and I erased all the text, the original text. So now it was just this space with these interconnected empty areas. And then I gave them a worksheet that said, like, using our readings from class, what was the theme of the course? What is a seed of truth that you found in the course? What's something that you can take with you to apply to your life? And then in all these like little orbs, write, evidences from our readings that like support all of the other content that you've produced. So could they use AI for that? Yeah, possibly, but it's going to be a lot harder. And ultimately, like, the work of synthesis, which is the work that would be easier to avoid if you could upload the prompt, that work of synthesis, I don't know how they'd be able to offload that to AI for a project like that.
Yeah, that'd be very. I mean,
I'm sure it's
this was
possible,
this
but
was a take home, right?
yeah.
So what you would have to do is, and you have on your syllabus all the readings, required readings.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess what you could theoretically do. Now I'm curious. Now we should test this. Is take your syllabus and upload it and ask that exact prompt and then see what it comes up with.
Sure.
Because I do see what you're saying, but if the AI has all the titles and it
Mhm.
has what your prompt is, and then it has a description of your course, I wouldn't see why it couldn't do that. The thing too is it can read images now.
Mhm.
So I'm very curious. That should, I mean, you should test this. You should
I
test this
should.
actually.
I should. I suppose the final piece is that they didn't just submit it and walk away, but each of them had a one-on-one meeting with me to explain what was happening. So
And that was actually something that was in my mind. You know, how can people get around this? And it's verbal examinations.
yeah,
And with the way universities are set up today, that's almost impossible to do in every institution. But I think that don't the Brits do that?
probably somewhere. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that at the well, I don't know. I guess but maybe in previous times they did. I don't know if they currently do that still. But verbal examinations, like you can't get away from. You can't use AI. So yeah, that's
Well,
interesting.
one last point, and then I need to go here soon. But
Yeah, sure.
um, Marshall McLuhan, who's this 20th century media theorist, he was keen to identify different ages where a different medium or like mode of communication was dominant. And you could sort of think of like, prehistoric man, or really until the invention of writing, lived in an oral culture, oral and oral. And, so he walks us through this development of print, which was superseded by radio, which was superseded by television, which was superseded by digital. And then he was dead by the time, the internet really came to the fore. Um, but so now we're reaching into this, bizarre age of um, screen technology. But one of the things he pointed out, even as digital was nascent, was that in some sense it was kind of returning us to some of the modes that were common in an oral culture, like um, print culture is very linear. Like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So you could think of baseball as like the thinking man's game. That's what it's known as. The sort of manufacturing. How do you chart a baseball game? It's like all these boxes, one after the other, and it's very
Hmm.
systematic. And this happened, this happens. Something like basketball is very, or soccer is like very oral culture. Everything's happening all at once. Like there's this sort of like
Hmm.
movement, and it's organic and rhizomal, and like little things are happening everywhere. So that's basically what the internet is like, but on steroids. So this is a long way of saying, so much of academic culture is based on print culture or writing culture, and so we have them write papers. We expect them to produce linear arguments, and we want them to be well read. I think we're entering a post-literate age where maybe
Hmm.
with video technology and AI especially, we're sort of moving into an oral and oral space, and I think there's probably a lot of validity to that, Eric. Where, um, well, at least in person, that's something you can't fake with AI, and probably it's a way that a lot of the students are already thinking, and I'm sure that they would complain like, yeah, but I mean, I have all the ideas and I kind of understand it, but then when I try and write it, I just can't. Now you could also make the argument that there's very little difference between thinking and like writing or speaking, and so to be able to write clearly is just proof that you're able to think clearly, and I think that that's a good argument to make too. But anyway, that's a long way of saying I do think that there's something about, yeah, oral exams and that sort of performance that would be more in tune to where the students are, and also maybe more attuned to where like the culture is moving. I don't know.
Oh man, really, really good thought. I know you have to go here in just a moment. It was making me think, how is this going to change to the faster technology becomes, the more accessible AI is. Accessible in the sense of I don't need to open my app. I can just talk to Siri and talk to
Mm,
Siri in a way that I'm talking to you, where I don't need to engage
right, right.
really with writing. I can just talk it. And then I'm just
Mhm.
hearing it. And now I'm putting it on times two. I'm saying, what's the history of Rome? It's like, brrr, it's doing the Wikipedia, but in my mind, right? Then writing and having to think linearly like you're is going to be even more further away. Okay, so to end this on the most positive note possible, Stephen. Okay, for the creatives out there who are either aspiring creatives or those who are in the field and working, and they're seeing all of this AI around them, and their bosses are saying use AI as much as possible. What would your advice be to not only grow deeper in just being creative in general, but then using AI and protecting their jobs and going into the future in a positive with a positive attitude? What would you recommend, or what would you say to them?
So the example that came to my mind was you've maybe heard of Alphonse Mucha. I don't know if that's exactly how you say his name, but Alphonse Mucha, he's like the originator of Art Nouveau. You'd recognize his work if you saw it, even if you don't know the name. Um, when he was before he got his big break, he was like working basically in like a poster shop, and he was producing um, the kinds of work that was really popular at the time, and that was his job. He was sort of like a drone in his print world, but on his own, he was like practicing his drawing and he was honing his art style. And if I remember the story right, it came to pass that a certain designer was supposed to produce this poster and it fell through, or they weren't able to do it. Anyway, it was like Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and this was his boss was like, we need a poster. So he had this opportunity where it's like, okay, I could produce a poster just like everyone else's poster, or I could do this thing that I've been practicing. And so he shot his shot and he produced a poster that was in his style. And it still kind of looked a little bit like the other posters, but it was also very distinct. And that was like his opportunity and his moment. And it spawned this whole kind of like, I don't know, movement that crossed like international boundaries. And you can still say now like Art Nouveau style. And, he's sort of like the originator of it. So what does that have to do with AI and creatives? So if you're working in a creative job, you're going to have to start using AI. Probably if you're doing any job, you're going to have to start using AI. There are going to be all these demands for productivity and efficiency. And guess what? The AI is going to win in those realms. But if it's something that you are really interested in, like if you're actually interested in painting or dance for dance or any of these creative fields for the intrinsic goods and not because you think they can make you famous or, I don't know, make you fit or make you rich or something, if you're actually interested in it for its own sake, then use it and do it for its own sake. And who cares if you sell it or who cares if you make money? But then if you do get really good at it, someone at some point is going to see it and say, "Oh, dang, a human made that." I've been swimming in this world full of all this AI stuff, and yeah, it looks really cool, but like, I thought everything was made by AI. This was made by a human, or like a human can move like that, or a human can sing like that. And I think my hope is that even in the future, if we all have AI friends on Facebook and we are all surrounded by AI fabricated things and who knows what other modes of like humanoids will be floating around us. My hope is that even in a space like that, if a person actually really does something and pursues it with depth and vigor and fervor and sacrifice, then that fruit will be undeniable and people will take notice.
Dang, awesome. If you had a mic, you could mic drop and then just walk away.
Thanks, Eric.
Just walk away. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. Super appreciate it. If people wanted to look you up and see what's going on in your end, where do they go?
Right now, I would send people to alphabetparade.com, and that's where they can see where my new children's book will be launching. And here soon, I'm going to be giving away 100 free signed copies of my first children's book.
All
So,
right.
yeah, so people can sign up for that, and I'd love to send them a
99
free
because you're
book.
going to give me one, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
No, very cool. Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen, for your time. Super appreciate it. Definitely a pleasure. We'll be doing this again soon. All right.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Yep. Talk to you later.